never thought an old leather notebook could change my life. It was tucked neatly in the top drawer of Henry's desk, almost as if he wanted me to find it. My husband had been gone for 6 months now, taken suddenly by a heart attack that left me breathless in more ways than one. I had avoided his office, unable to face the shadows of his absence. But today something pulled me in. The notebook smelled faintly of his cologne, the same musky scent that used to linger on his shirts. When I opened the first page, my hands shook. It wasn't filled with work notes or grocery lists like I expected. It was a confession, and as my eyes moved across his words, I realized I hadn't known the man I shared my bed with for 27 years. My name is Vivian Carlyle, and I am 68 years old. I thought I had lived a simple, steady life. I grew up in a small Indiana town where people left their doors unlocked and neighbors brought casseroles when trouble came. Henry and I met when I was 20, married by 22, and built what I thought was a good life. He worked in finance. I taught elementary school until our first daughter was born. We bought a house, raised children, paid taxes, and I assumed we were like any other American couple. Ordinary. Predictable. But as I flipped through those pages, Henry's neat handwriting revealed a darker truth. He had secrets buried so deep they had lived and died with him, until now. The first entry dated back to 1989, just a year after our wedding. I remember that year vividly. Our honeymoon tan had barely faded, and I had been convinced the universe had blessed me with the perfect man. But in his notebook, Henry wrote of betrayal. He mentioned a woman's name, Serena, and described her in a way no husband should describe another woman. My heart thumped so hard I thought it might echo through the quiet house. I felt a sting of humiliation, realizing that while I had been folding laundry and cooking Sunday dinners, he had been scribbling down desires for someone else. My lips trembled as I whispered the name out loud. Serena! It felt foreign in my mouth, yet dangerous, like poison laced in honey. The deeper I read, the more sinister it became. This wasn't just an affair. Henry had invested money into Serena's ventures. A secret account, transfers I knew nothing about. Page after page revealed numbers, initials, cryptic codes, and meeting places. He had built an entire double life beneath the floorboards of ours. My mind reeled with every line, every revelation. Was this where our savings went when he claimed the market was bad? Had I been raising our kids on a lie, scraping coupons and pinching pennies while he poured money into someone else's pocket? My hands clenched the paper so tight it nearly tore, but still I read on, consumed, unable to stop. It wasn't only Serena. My chest tightened as I turned another page. Henry wrote about someone named A.G., a set of initials with no explanation. He mentioned keeping her quiet and signing papers under pressure. The words blurred as my eyes watered, yet I forced myself to continue. For the first time, I saw Henry not as the man I married, but as a stranger. Each entry felt like a knife, each word a betrayal. I whispered into the silence of our home. Who were you, Henry? Who did I sleep next to all those years? The floor beneath me seemed to tilt. My life, the one I thought was sturdy, was cracking wide open, and there was no one left to explain. I tried to steady my breath, clutching the notebook like a lifeline. My children's faces flashed in my mind. Rachel, with her fiery independence, and Michael, forever my gentle boy. They had worshipped their father. I could still hear Rachel saying, "Dad always knew what to do." But if they saw what I was reading, would they still adore him? Or would they despise him? The weight of the decision pressed heavy on my chest. Should I keep these secrets buried with him, or bring them into the light? My hands trembled as if Henry's ghost hovered nearby, daring me to expose him. I swallowed hard, knowing that whatever I chose, life would never return to what it was. I set the notebook down on Henry's desk and leaned back in his chair, staring at the lamp he used to switch on every night. I could almost hear his voice, calm and steady, telling me everything was under control. Except now I knew control was a mask he wore while feeding lies into the shadows. For a fleeting second, anger surged through me, not only for myself but for our children. He had made me complicit in a story I didn't know I was living. He had stolen the years I thought were ours and replaced them with riddles, secrets, and sins that even death couldn't hide. My breath caught as I turned back to the notebook, unable to resist the lure of more truth. Near the middle of the notebook, I found something that chilled me deeper than any mention of Serena. Map. Drawn carefully, almost obsessively, with circles marking locations across our town. Next to them were notes. M on duty. Safe after 9. Use caution. It didn't read like a love affair anymore. It read like something darker, something dangerous. I slammed the book shut and pressed it to my chest, as if shielding myself from his ghost. What had Henry been involved in? And worse, was I in danger now because of it? The sound of rain against the window grew louder, as if the storm itself wanted to warn me. For the first time in my life, I felt afraid of the man I had loved most. I thought of calling Rachel or Michael, but my throat tightened. What could I possibly say? Your father wasn't who you thought he was. That wasn't a truth you dropped over the phone. And yet, part of me feared that the people Henry had written about, Serena AG, whoever lurked behind those initials, might still be out there. Maybe they were reading his obituaries, remembering debts owed, secrets promised. I looked down at my wrinkled hands clutching the notebook, realizing they shook not just from grief, but from fear. Somewhere deep inside, I understood. Finding this book wasn't an accident. Henry left it behind for a reason. The question was, did he mean it as a warning or a trap? As thunder rolled across the sky, I gathered the notebook and pressed it against my chest. I whispered to myself, I have to know everything, every secret, every lie. My heartbeat pounded with a mix of fear and rage. For 68 years, I had been someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's teacher. But now, standing in Henry's study, I realized I was stepping into a role I had never played before. A woman searching for the truth. And I promised myself no matter where it led, I would follow it. Because if Henry thought death would silence his secrets, he underestimated the woman he left behind. And before we continue, I want to gently remind you, if you're as hooked by this story as I am, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything as we unravel this journey together. But hold on tight, because what I discovered in the next pages of Henry's notebook changed not only how I saw him, but how I saw myself. And what I uncovered next will leave you breathless. The storm outside had grown violent, rain hammering the windows as if trying to drown out the pounding of my heart. I sat frozen in Henry's chair, staring at the leather notebook as though it might leap open and devour me. The map haunted me. The circles, the codes, the deliberate handwriting of a man I thought I knew. I couldn't stop my mind from spinning with questions. Who was Serena really? What did AG stand for? And those locations? What had Henry been doing there, late at night in secret? My breath came fast and shallow. The longer I sat there, the more the silence felt suffocating. Finally, I forced myself to stand, gripping the notebook tight. If I wanted answers, I had to start somewhere, and my gut told me the first place was hidden within those circled marks on his map. I flipped the notebook back open, my finger tracing the inked lines Henry had drawn. The first location circled was near Riverside Park, a place I hadn't visited in years. The note beside it read simply, M on duty. What did that even mean? My mind conjured up wild scenarios. Was it about money? Drugs? Some shadowy transaction? The handwriting was too precise to be careless. Henry always prided himself on control, on order. If he marked it down, it mattered. A wave of nausea rolled through me as I realized this wasn't just a personal betrayal. It might be something criminal. The man who once held my hand at church and kissed my forehead before bed might have been leading a life tangled in danger. And now I was holding the blueprint. Sleep was impossible that night. I paced the hallways like a ghost, the wooden floors creaking beneath my slippers. Every time I passed the photos on the wall, I felt them mocking me. Family vacations, smiling faces, anniversaries where Henry's arm was wrapped protectively around my shoulder. Had all those smiles been lies? Or had I simply been blind? When dawn broke, pale and gray, I made myself a strong cup of coffee and stared out the window. The storm had passed, but the turmoil inside me hadn't. My hands shook as I opened the notebook again, flipping through pages I had been too scared to study closely the night before. That's when I saw it. Henry had taped a folded photograph to one page, and what I saw in that picture made me drop my coffee cup onto the floor. It was a picture of Serena. Her face was younger than mine, striking in a sharp, confident way. She wore a red dress, her smile wicked, her arm draped casually around Henry's shoulders. My breath hitched. He had kept this photo hidden all these years, taped inside his notebook like a sacred token. Beneath it, in his neat handwriting, he had written, "She always knows too much." My stomach flipped. Who was this woman to him? A mistress? A partner in something darker? Or both? The fact that he kept her photo hidden, yet treasured, suggested she wasn't someone who simply came and went. She mattered. And if she mattered to Henry, then she mattered to me, because she was the thread that could unravel the entire tapestry of lies. I sat back, the photograph trembling in my hands. If Serena was still alive, she might have the answers I needed. But the thought of finding her made my skin prickle with unease. What if she didn't want to be found? What if she was part of something dangerous Henry had been involved in? My mind raced with possibilities, but deep down one truth became clear. I couldn't stay idle anymore. I had spent 6 months grieving Henry, building a shrine in my heart to the man I thought he was. That shrine was now in ruins, and in its place stood a burning need for truth. I whispered into the silence of my kitchen, "I will find her." My voice cracked but carried conviction. For the first time in months I felt alive. Later that afternoon I drove to Riverside Park. The notebook sat on the passenger seat beside me, as if Henry himself rode shotgun. The park looked unchanged. Children's laughter echoed from the playground. Joggers ran by with headphones in, and the river glistened under the sunlight. But I wasn't there to admire the scenery. I clutched the notebook, eyes scanning the benches, the pathways, the old maintenance shed in the corner. M on duty. Who was M? My heart skipped as a man in a worn maintenance uniform walked across the path, pushing a cart of tools. Could it be him? My instincts screamed to follow. So I did, keeping my distance, my pulse thrumming in my ears. Every step I took made me feel both foolish and electric, like I was stepping into a world I had never belonged in. The man stopped near the shed, fumbling with keys. I ducked behind a tree, notebook pressed against my chest. My rational side told me I was being ridiculous, a grieving widow chasing ghosts. But another part of me, the part that had tasted Henry's betrayal, insisted I was closer to the truth. I pulled out my phone, snapping a quick picture of the man, just in case. Then, with trembling fingers, I turned back to the notebook and studied the map again. There were more circled places. A downtown warehouse, a motel on the outskirts of town, even a bank I used to pass on my way to work. These weren't random. They connected somehow, though I couldn't yet see how. My head spun, but my resolve hardened. Henry had drawn me a puzzle, and I wouldn't rest until I solved it. Driving home, I replayed memories like a film reel. Nights Henry claimed he was working late. Weekends he said he needed to clear his head. Vacations where he insisted on side trips I hadn't understood. All the pieces that never fit suddenly clicked together in a horrifying mosaic. He hadn't just been living a double life. He had been meticulous in hiding it. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, whispering, "You thought I'd never find out." My voice trembled, not from weakness but from the fire rising inside me. For decades, I had been the quiet wife, the good mother, the reliable woman who never asked too many questions. But now, questions were all I had, and I intended to chase every single one until the answer screamed back at me. That night, I spread the notebook open across the kitchen table, my reading glasses perched on my nose. I copied down every name, every number, every place. The pages told a story of betrayal, but also of connections, like a web stretching farther than I imagined. What scared me most wasn't the affair, but the possibility that Henry had been entangled in something criminal. The codes, the initials, the maps, they weren't the scribbles of a love-struck fool. They were the calculations of a man balancing danger and desire. And if he had kept this from me, what else had he left behind? As the clock ticked past midnight, my eyelids grew heavy, but I refused to close the notebook. Somewhere between grief and rage, I had found a new identity, a woman on a mission. As dawn crept through the blinds, I leaned back in my chair, exhaustion pulling at my bones. Yet beneath it all, a strange excitement buzzed in my veins. For the first time since Henry's death, I wasn't just existing. I was living with purpose. My hand brushed over the notebook, and I whispered to Henry's ghost, "You should have known better than to leave this behind." But even as I said it, I knew he had done so deliberately. Whether as a warning, a punishment, or an invitation, I couldn't yet tell. But the truth was clear. This notebook was only the beginning. And tomorrow, I would take the next step toward uncovering the life Henry had so carefully hidden. The next morning, I woke with a pounding in my head and a fire in my chest. I hadn't slept more than an hour, but adrenaline kept me standing. My fingers itched to pick up Henry's notebook again, to study its cryptic codes. But today I had a different plan. I opened my laptop and typed "Serena red dress photo Henry" into every search engine I could think of, though I knew it was a shot in the dark. Nothing came up. No social media, no business records, no obituary. She was a ghost. That alone terrified me more than anything, because if a woman looked that bold, that striking, and yet left no trace, it meant she wanted to be hidden. And that meant finding her would not be easy. But my gut told me she was still out there, breathing the same air I was. I poured another cup of coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. If I couldn't find Serena through the internet, I would have to try a different angle. I remembered Henry's business cards, stuffed away in a drawer years ago. Pulling open the desk, I found a bundle of them. Names of people he worked with, men and women from industries I didn't fully understand. One card caught my eye. It was for a law office, but scribbled on the back was the name Serena with a phone number. My breath stopped. Could it be that easy? My hands trembled as I picked up the phone and dialed. The ring echoed in my ear until finally, a woman's voice answered, low and sharp. "Who's calling?" My mouth went dry, but I forced myself to say, "This is Vivian, Henry's wife." There was a long silence, then a chilling laugh. "I wondered how long it would take you." Her voice sent shivers racing down my spine. There was a confidence to her tone, a familiarity with my husband that made my stomach twist. "What do you mean?" I asked, gripping the phone tighter. Serena's chuckle deepened. "Henry wasn't as careful as he thought. I knew you'd find me eventually." My heart pounded. "What do you know about my husband?" I demanded. The line went silent for a moment before she whispered, "Everything he never told you." Then she hung up. I stared at the phone in disbelief, my hands shaking. That wasn't just an affair. That was something deeper, darker. And if she knew Henry's secrets, she might know mine too. For the first time, I felt the icy edge of fear cutting into my resolve. But fear wasn't going to stop me anymore. If anything, it fueled me. I decided I needed to see her face to face. I redialed the number, but it went straight to voicemail. She was one step ahead of me already. Fine. She wanted to play games, I would play too. I opened Henry's notebook again, flipping to the other circled locations. One stood out, the old motel on Highway 17. Henry and I had driven past it countless times, a place where the neon sign flickered and shadows lingered. He had written just 2 letters beside it. Sir. My pulse raced. Could it be Serena's initials? The coincidence was too big to ignore. By the afternoon, I was in my car, driving down that lonely stretch of road, Henry's notebook sitting like a compass on the passenger seat. Every mile closer, my anxiety sharpened, but so did my determination. Whatever awaited me at that motel, I knew it was tied to Serena. The motel looked even more desolate up close. Paint peeled from the walls, the sign buzzed faintly, and the parking lot was nearly empty save for a few rusty cars. I parked near the back, clutching the notebook as though it were a shield. Walking inside, the musty air hit me like a wall. The clerk at the desk barely looked up. His eyes glazed. "Need a room?" he asked. I shook my head. "I'm looking for someone, Serena." His eyebrows twitched just slightly before he muttered, "Never heard of her." But I saw the lie in his face. My stomach knotted. "Thank you," I said softly, forcing a smile before retreating to the lot. As I sat in my car, I noticed a light flicker on in one of the second-story rooms. My instincts screamed that she was there, watching me, daring me to come closer. I climbed the creaking staircase, my heart pounding with each step. The hallway smelled of cigarettes and mildew. I stopped at the door with the light shining faintly underneath, my hand hovering over the handle. I knocked, softly at first, then louder. For a long moment nothing happened. Then the door creaked open just an inch. A single eye peered through the gap, cold and sharp. My chest tightened. "Serena," I whispered. The door shut instantly, the lock sliding into place. My knees weakened. She was here. She was real. And she wanted me to know she was aware of me. I pressed my hand against the door. "Please," I begged. "I just need to know who my husband really was." Silence. Then, faintly, her voice slipped through the crack. "He wasn't the man you think. Walk away before it destroys you too." Her words sank like a blade into my chest. I staggered back, shaking my head. Walk away. After everything Henry had hidden from me. After Serena's photo taped like a shrine in his notebook. I couldn't just turn around and pretend this wasn't real. My life had already been destroyed the moment I opened that leather cover. And now, this woman was telling me it would get worse. My fists clenched at my sides, my jaw tight. "I can't," I whispered through the door. "Not until I know the truth." For a moment, I thought I heard her sigh. Then, with deliberate slowness, I heard the lock click open again. The door opened wider this time, and in the dim yellow light, I finally saw her. The woman who had haunted Henry's secrets. Her presence was magnetic, terrifying. And her smile was poison. Serena looked exactly as she had in the photograph, though time had carved faint lines into her striking features. Her hair was black, cropped sharply around her jaw, and her eyes glittered with something between amusement and menace. She leaned casually against the doorframe, as though she had been expecting me. "Vivian," she said softly, drawing out my name like silk. "You've inherited more than you realize." My heart thudded violently. "What are you talking about?" She stepped aside, gesturing into the room. "If you want answers, you'll have to come inside." My pulse roared in my ears. This was it. The moment where everything could unravel or consume me. Against every instinct screaming to run, I stepped across the threshold, clutching Henry's notebook like it was my only lifeline. The door shut behind me with a final click, sealing me into her world. The room smelled faintly of cigarettes and perfume, the curtains drawn tight against the daylight. Papers littered the table, and a half-empty glass of wine sat beside them. Serena moved gracefully, almost predatory, as she crossed the room to sit in the chair opposite me. Her eyes never left mine, sharp and unyielding. "You think Henry was just unfaithful," she began, her voice low. "But that was only the surface. He was deeper in than you ever knew." My chest tightened. "Deeper into what?" "Yes." She smiled faintly, leaning closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Into something that doesn't forgive loose ends." My blood ran cold. I opened the notebook, shoving it toward her. "Then tell me what this means." She glanced at the pages, her lips curling into a knowing smirk. "This, Vivian," she said slowly, "isn't a diary. It's a ledger." My pulse hammered as Serena's words sank in. A ledger. I looked down at the familiar scrawls, the circled addresses, the initials, the numbers that never quite made sense. They weren't random notes from a distracted husband. They were transactions. My lips parted as the realization hit. "You mean money?" I whispered. Serena's smirk widened. "Not just money, Vivian. Power. Influence. Secrets people would kill to keep buried. She leaned back, her eyes glinting. Henry wasn't the mild-mannered man you thought he was. He was a broker of information. And this notebook, it's the key to everything he left behind. My stomach lurched. My Henry. Gentle, predictable Henry. Trading in shadows? It didn't feel real. But the ledger in my hands pulsed with truth. And Serena's knowing gaze confirmed what I already feared. My husband had lived a double life. And now I was caught in the middle of it. I stared at the pages, the names and numbers blurring together. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice shaking. Serena's smile faded, replaced with a calculating expression. "Because whether you like it or not, you're part of it now. His death didn't erase his debts, Vivian. Someone will come looking for this ledger. And when they do, they'll come looking for you." The words struck me like a physical blow. I thought I had lost everything when Henry died. But Serena was telling me I hadn't even begun to fall. My hands tightened around the notebook. "What do they want from me?" I asked. Serena leaned forward, her voice low and steady. "The same thing they always wanted from Henry. Silence, loyalty, and obedience. If you can't give them that," she paused, letting the weight of her words hang, "then you won't live long enough to grieve him properly." Her warning wrapped around me like a noose. "I don't understand," I said, my voice cracking. "Henry he was boring. He paid bills on time, he liked crossword puzzles, he hated flying. How could he be part of something like this?" Serena's laugh was sharp, bitter. "That was his cover, Vivian. The man who folds laundry and watches sitcoms doesn't get noticed. He fooled everyone, even you. But behind that mask, he was smarter, more ruthless than you think." My heart ached with betrayal. Had I ever really known the man I shared my bed with for decades? The notebook felt heavier in my hands, its secrets pressing down on me. Serena's gaze softened. Just for a moment. "You loved him," she said quietly. "And that makes you vulnerable. They'll use that against you. That's why I wanted to warn you." Her words sounded almost kind, but her eyes never lost their edge. I swallowed hard, staring at Serena. "And what about you? What's your role in all of this? Were you his mistress? His partner?" Serena tilted her head, her lips curling into a sly smile. "Why not both?" The words stung like acid. My breath caught in my throat as my mind painted pictures I didn't want to see. "He loved me," I insisted weakly, as though saying it aloud would make it true. Serena chuckled. "I never said he didn't. But love doesn't erase ambition, Vivian. He wanted everything. Comfort at home and excitement in the shadows. You gave him one. I gave him the other." Her gaze hardened again. "But make no mistake, when he died, he left both of us with the mess he created." My fingers trembled on the notebook, fury rising inside me. If Henry had trapped us both in his lies, I wasn't going to be his silent widow. I stood, clutching the ledger against my chest. "You're wrong if you think I'll just sit here and wait for whoever's coming. I won't be another pawn in Henry's game." Serena's expression sharpened, but I saw a flicker of respect in her eyes. "Then you'd better be ready to fight, Vivian. Because this world doesn't forgive weakness." She rose too, her presence overwhelming in the small room. "Take the notebook, but don't come looking for me again. If they find out we've spoken, it'll be both our heads." She reached for the door, but before she opened it, she leaned close to me, her breath warm against my ear. "One last thing. There's a name in that book, circled twice. Find them first before they find you." With that, she slipped out into the night, leaving me alone in the dim, suffocating room, my heart pounding with dread. I stumbled back to my car, gripping the notebook like a lifeline. The parking lot felt darker, heavier, as though unseen eyes watched my every move. Sliding into the driver's seat, I flipped through the pages frantically until I found it. A name circled not once, but twice. Calder. My blood ran cold. No last name, no address, just Calder. The name looked out of place, bolder than the rest. Who was this person? And why had Henry marked them so carefully? My fingers traced the ink, trying to draw answers from the page. But the only thing I felt was a growing sense of danger. Whoever Calder was, they were important. And Serena had made it clear. I had to reach them before they reached me. But how? My husband had kept his secrets well, and Calder was buried deep within them. Still, something inside me whispered that my survival depended on it. Driving home, the world outside my windshield blurred. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward me. Every car that followed felt like a threat. By the time I reached my driveway, my nerves were frayed to the edge. I shut off the engine and sat in silence, staring at my house. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a trap, a place where Henry's lies still lingered in the walls. Clutching the ledger, I walked inside, locking the door behind me. I spread the book across the kitchen table, determined to decode its mysteries. Page after page, I searched for patterns, for any clue about Calder. But exhaustion pressed heavy on me, and frustration gnawed at my resolve. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed a faint indentation on one of the pages, as though something had been written and torn out. My pulse quickened. What had Henry removed? I tilted the page under the light, my eyes straining to make sense of the marks. Slowly, faint numbers appeared. An address. My breath caught. Henry had tried to erase it, but the ghost of his writing remained. My hands shook as I scribbled it onto a piece of paper. The address was local, not far from town. Whoever Calder was, they weren't hiding across the country. They were right here within reach. Chill swept over me. That meant they could find me just as easily. My stomach twisted with both fear and determination. I knew what I had to do. Tomorrow I would go to that address. Tomorrow I would face Calder. As I closed the notebook, a sudden noise jolted me. The creak of floorboards upstairs. My blood froze. I wasn't alone in the house. Someone else was here right now, and they were coming closer. My breath caught as the floor above groaned again. Slowly, I set the notebook aside and reached for the nearest object, a kitchen knife glinting under the light. My fingers gripped the handle tight, my pulse drumming in my ears. Step by step, I crept toward the staircase, my eyes locked on the shadows at the top. The air felt suffocating, every second stretching into eternity. Then, a whisper cut through the silence. Soft, deliberate, unmistakable. Vivian. My heart slammed into my ribs. Whoever it was, they knew my name. My throat tightened as I raised the knife higher. "Who's there?" I called, my voice trembling. Silence followed, thick and heavy. Then, with agonizing slowness, a figure emerged from the darkness, cloaked in shadow. I could see only the outline. A tall frame, deliberate movements, eyes glinting faintly in the dark. My stomach dropped as realization hit. Calder had already found me. The figure stepped into the dim light of the hallway, and my grip on the knife tightened. He was taller than Henry, lean but strong, with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through me. His presence filled the house with a suffocating weight, like I was standing in the middle of a storm. "You shouldn't hold that," he said, his voice calm, almost amused, as he glanced at the knife in my hand. "It doesn't suit you." My heart raced. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice barely steady. His lips curved into a knowing smirk. "You already know. My name's Calder." The sound of it made my blood run cold. I had expected a ghost in the shadows, someone distant. But here he was, standing in my home, uninvited and terrifyingly composed, as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. I forced my feet not to retreat, though every instinct screamed at me to run. "How did you get in here?" I asked. Calder shrugged, his movements fluid, controlled. "Locks are for people who want to be left alone. And you, Vivian, are the opposite. You're holding on to something that doesn't belong to you." His eyes flicked toward the kitchen, where the ledger sat open on the table. My stomach lurched. "It's mine," I lied quickly. "Henry left it for me." Calder's expression hardened, and he took a slow step closer. "Henry didn't leave it for you. He left it behind, and there's a difference. That book holds debts, promises, leverage. It's worth more than your house, your pension, even your life. Do you have any idea what you're carrying?" His voice dropped low, the kind that made the hair on my neck stand on end. My knees felt weak, but I kept my chin lifted, determined not to show fear. "Then why are you here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I felt. Calder's gaze lingered on me, unblinking. "Because I need to know where your loyalties lie. Henry and we had an arrangement. He kept the ledger safe. He made sure certain names stayed out of the light. But Henry's gone now. And with him gone, I need someone to take his place. Or destroy that book before it destroys us all." His words hit like a riddle, each one more dangerous than the last. "Take his place." I echoed, my throat dry. Calder tilted his head slightly, as though studying me. "Why not? You've already opened it. You've already crossed the line." I shook my head, clutching the knife tighter. "I don't want any part of this. I didn't even know Henry was involved in whatever this is." Calder's smirk returned, but it carried no warmth. "That's the problem, Vivian. You lived beside him for years and never saw the truth. That kind of blindness makes you dangerous. Others will think you're hiding something. They'll think you know more than you do. And when people think you're keeping secrets, they don't ask questions. They act." A chill spread through me as I realized the threat was bigger than Calder himself. Whoever else was connected to this ledger wouldn't hesitate to silence me. Calder's eyes narrowed. "So you have two choices. You can hand me the ledger and walk away, or you can hold on to it and accept the consequences." The words echoed in the silence, sharp and merciless. My mind raced. Giving him the ledger might buy me safety, but at what cost? Henry had circled Calder's name for a reason. He had wanted me to see it, maybe even to fear it. If I handed it over now, I'd be erasing whatever warning Henry left behind. My grip on the knife trembled. "If it's so dangerous, why haven't you just taken it?" I asked, trying to stall. Calder's eyes glinted, and for the first time, I saw something crack beneath his calm mask. "Because Henry trusted me," he said quietly. "And I trusted him. But you..." He stepped closer, so near I could feel the heat of his breath. "You're not him. I need to know if you're strong enough to carry what he left behind, or if I should end this tonight." His words sent a shiver down my spine. I swallowed hard, my mind flashing with images of Henry's smile, his steady hands, his secret life I had never known. I wanted to believe I was strong, that I could carry the weight he had left me. But I wasn't Henry. I was just Vivian, a widow with a broken heart and a house that no longer felt safe. My hands trembled as I lowered the knife, my arm too heavy to keep raised. Calder's gaze softened slightly, though his body remained tense. "That's better," he murmured. "But don't mistake weakness for mercy. If you want to survive this, you'll need to decide quickly. Who do you want to be? The grieving wife who looks the other way, or the woman who finally learns the truth about her husband?" His words cut deep, stirring something inside me that had been buried under grief. I glanced back at the ledger, its pages waiting like a test I hadn't studied for. "If I learn the truth," I asked carefully, "what happens then?" Calder's smile was cold, deliberate. "Then you'll understand why Henry hid it from you. And you'll see just how far his reach went." His eyes locked on mine, sharp and unyielding. "But once you know, there's no going back. People will hunt you, manipulate you, even kill for what's inside that book. And if you're not ready for that, you're already dead." My stomach churned, but beneath the fear, I felt a flicker of defiance. Maybe Calder thought I was weak, but Henry hadn't left me the ledger by accident. He had circled Calder's name for a reason. Perhaps this was the beginning of the truth he wanted me to uncover. I straightened my shoulders, meeting Calder's gaze without flinching. His smirk faded, replaced by a rare glimmer of respect. "So you've made your choice," he said softly. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned toward the ledger, flipping to the page with his name circled twice. "Henry wanted me to find you," I said firmly. "So tell me why. What's so important about you?" Calder's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. He stepped closer, lowering his voice until it was barely more than a whisper. "Because Henry and I weren't just partners. We were brothers in arms. And what he carried, what he protected, it was bigger than you, bigger than me, bigger than anyone you can imagine." His words sent a chill racing down my spine. "And now," he continued, his hand brushing the edge of the ledger, "all of it is in your hands. If you fail, Vivian, you won't just lose your life. You'll destroy everything Henry worked for." I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "Then teach me," I whispered, surprising even myself. "If this is what Henry left behind, then I need to understand it. I need to know what he died for." Calder's eyes searched mine, his expression unreadable. Finally, he gave a slow, deliberate nod. "Very well," he said. "But understand this. Knowledge has a price. And once you've paid it, there's no return." His voice lowered further, filled with a weight I couldn't ignore. "The first step is knowing who to trust. And the second is learning that trust is a weapon." His words lingered in the air as he reached for the ledger, flipping to a page I hadn't noticed before. My breath caught as he tapped a name written in bold letters, one I recognized instantly. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone I had known for years. Calder's finger hovered over the name like a blade pressed against my skin. My stomach dropped as I read it again and again, the letters swimming before my eyes. It wasn't the name of a stranger, not some shadow from Henry's secret past. It was Eloise Turner, my oldest friend, the woman who had sat by my side at Henry's funeral, the one who had brought casseroles when grief made me forget how to cook, the one who had held my hand during endless nights of tears. My voice cracked. "No, there must be a mistake." Calder's eyes remained steady, cold. "There are no mistakes in this ledger. If her name's there, it's because she played a part. You don't know her like you think you do." My breath hitched, anger flaring through my shock. She would never betray me. But deep inside, doubt coiled like smoke. Calder leaned back, his expression unreadable. "That's what Henry thought about me once. Trust has layers, Vivian. The deeper you go, the sharper it cuts." His words rattled in my chest, but I couldn't stop thinking of Eloise's smile, her gentle voice, the way she always seemed to know what to say. Could it all have been a mask? I slammed the ledger shut, the sound cracking like a gunshot in the tense air. "No," I whispered. "She's my friend. She's family." Calder's smirk returned, though this time it felt like pity. "Family can be worse than enemies. You want to survive. Test her. Ask her a question only she'd know. See how she answers. If she lies, you'll know Henry was right to keep this book hidden." His voice was low, coaxing, like a devil offering choices that were never really choices at all. I felt the room close in on me. The air seemed heavier, pressing against my lungs. I couldn't accept it, but I also couldn't ignore it. The image of Eloise laughing with Henry at barbecues, of her slipping folded cash into birthday cards for our daughter, of her face shining with tears at Henry's funeral, they all twisted in my mind like poisoned memories. Why would she be in here? I demanded. Calder stepped closer, his eyes fixed on mine. Because she took something from him. Because she owed him. Or because she betrayed him. That ledger doesn't record kindness, Vivian. It records power. Every name has a price beside it. Do you want to know hers? His hand slid across the table, hovering over the book. My throat clenched as I nodded, though fear screamed for me to stop. He opened it again, slowly, deliberately, and pointed at a number scrawled in Henry's sharp handwriting. My breath stuttered. It wasn't money, it was a date. A date I recognized instantly. The night Henry had collapsed in his study, gasping for breath. His lips blew as I screamed for help. The night he died. My legs nearly gave way, the world spinning around me. What does this mean? I whispered. Calder's gaze darkened, the lines of his face sharp in the dim light. It means Eloise was with him that night. It means she knew something. And it means she never told you the truth. The words hit like a knife to my chest. My knees buckled, and I clutched the edge of the table. Eloise had been there. She had said she was at home. She had sworn she came the moment she heard. Had she lied to my face? I stumbled back, my mind unraveling. Calder watched me, his expression almost sympathetic. I told you, Vivian. Trust cuts deep. Henry wanted you to find this for a reason. He circled my name, yes, but he left hers written in plain sight. He wanted you to see who stood by his side that night. My chest heaved, my heart hammering in my ears. Every memory of Eloise shifted, tainted by the possibility of betrayal. Could she have watched him die? Could she have played a part in it? I shook my head violently, tears burning my eyes. I don't believe it. She loved him. She loved us. Calder's lips curled into a grim line. Then find out. Go to her. Ask her about that night. But be careful, if she's been lying this long, she won't let the truth come easily. His warning lingered like smoke. I sat heavily on the couch, my body trembling, my fingers digging into the fabric like claws. The house around me seemed foreign now, shadows stretching longer than they should, the rain tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. Louise, my confidant, my sister in everything but blood. If she had been there, if she had lied to me, then every hug, every whispered word of comfort, had been poison. Calder's presence loomed over me, unrelenting. You have a choice, he said softly. Confront her and risk everything. Or burn that ledger now and pretend you never saw it. My stomach churned. I couldn't burn it. Not with Henry's handwriting, not with his secrets still pulsing on the pages. I'll talk to her, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Calder nodded, satisfied, but his eyes still burned with something unreadable. Then prepare yourself. She won't come quietly. The thought of facing Eloise filled me with dread, but also with a twisted hunger for truth. I needed answers, no matter how much they shattered me. I imagined calling her, hearing her voice crackle through the line, her laugh spilling into the air. How could I confront her without giving myself away? How could I ask without alerting her that I knew too much? Calder leaned down, his face close enough for me to see the faint scar along his jaw. Don't go in blind, he murmured. You'll need proof. She'll deny everything if you just ask. Find something in her house, something that ties her to Henry that night. His words were poison and medicine all at once, feeding my fear but giving me direction. Proof. If I had proof, I could finally know. My fingers clenched into fists. I would go to her. I would find it. Sleep was impossible that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the storm outside raging like my thoughts. Every creak of the house made me jolt. Every shadow felt alive. Eloise's face haunted me, shifting from kind to cruel in the blink of an eye. By morning, my decision was carved into stone. I would visit her, but I wouldn't tell her why. I would smile, sip her coffee, pretend everything was normal, and then I would search. I rose at dawn, pulling on a coat, my hands trembling as I grabbed Henry's old car keys. Calder was gone, vanished like smoke in the night, but his words still clung to me. Trust is a weapon. I would carry that with me, sharp and ready. As I stepped outside into the crisp morning air, I whispered to myself, if she lied, I'll know. And if she betrayed him, she'll pay. The drive to Eloise's house felt like moving through a dream. The streets I had traveled 1,000 times blurred around me, each stop sign and mailbox taunting me with memories of easier days. My fingers gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. When I pulled up to her charming white house, with its roses blooming in the front yard and wind chimes dancing in the breeze, my chest tightened. It looked so innocent, so familiar. But the name in Henry's ledger pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat. Eloise opened the door before I could even knock, her face breaking into a warm smile. Vivian, she exclaimed, her arms opening wide. I forced a smile, my heart hammering. "I thought I'd drop by," I said softly, stepping inside. The scent of lavender and freshly baked bread wrapped around me. Her kindness felt suffocating now, every gesture dripping with suspicion. Eloise's arms wrapped around me in a hug that used to feel safe, but now it felt like a trap. I tried not to flinch, tried to breathe in the lavender, clinging to her sweater like it wasn't choking me. "It's been too long," she said warmly, pulling me into her living room. The space was cozy, familiar, lined with photographs of her children and shelves crammed with books. I forced a smile, masking the storm inside me. My eyes darted around, searching without meaning to. Every corner felt suspicious now, every drawer a possible hiding place. "I thought I'd check in," I lied, my voice too bright. Eloise beamed, her eyes crinkling with affection. "I'm glad you did. You look like you haven't slept." She was right. My body was heavy with exhaustion, but my heart was wired, restless. I perched on the couch, waiting for the moment I could begin. Eloise busied herself in the kitchen, the clinking of mugs and the sound of coffee brewing filling the air. I sat still, hands clasped tightly in my lap, listening to every sound like it carried meaning. My gaze landed on a photograph on her mantel. Henry, Eloise, and me at a neighborhood cookout years ago. Henry's arm was slung over her shoulder, his smile wide. The image stabbed at me. Was this friendship ever real? Or had betrayal been simmering in the background all along? Eloise returned with 2 steaming mugs, her smile unwavering. "Cream and sugar, just how you like it." My throat tightened as I took the cup. "Thank you." I sipped slowly, the warmth soothing my hands but not my heart. "How have you been holding up?" she asked gently, her voice dripping with concern. "I'm managing," I murmured, searching her eyes for cracks. But all I saw was kindness. I wanted to scream at her, to shove the ledger in her face and demand answers. But Calder's voice echoed in my head. "Don't go in blind." I forced myself to breathe, to keep my mask in place. "You know," I said softly, "I've been thinking a lot about Henry lately, especially that night." Eloise's hand paused on her mug, just for a second before she smiled again. "Of course. It was awful." My heart lurched. That pause, it was tiny, fleeting, but it felt like lightning. Did she know I was testing her? I leaned in, lowering my voice. "Sometimes I wonder if there were things he didn't tell me. Secrets." Eloise laughed lightly, though it sounded forced. "Oh, Henry always had his little projects. But he adored you, Vivian. You know that." Her words were sweet, but my gut twisted. She was dodging. My suspicion hardened into resolve. I had to find proof. When she excused herself to grab cookies, I seized my chance. My hands trembled as I slipped from the couch and moved quietly through the living room. Every step felt like betrayal, yet I couldn't stop. I opened a drawer in her side table. Just magazines. Another drawer, random trinkets. My breath came fast, ears straining for the sound of her return. My eyes darted to a small wooden box on the shelf. It looked old, out of place among her polished decor. I pulled it down, my fingers shaking as I opened it. Inside were letters, yellowed with age. My heart pounded as I flipped through them. Henry's handwriting, looping and unmistakable. My knees went weak. Why did she have these? They weren't addressed to her. They were to me. My name, Vivian, scrawled across envelopes that had never reached me. I clutched the letters, bile rising in my throat. Panic surged through me. I shoved the letters back into the box and returned it to the shelf just as Eloise reappeared with a plate of cookies. My chest heaved as I plastered on a smile. "Smells delicious," I said, my voice too high. She set the plate down, her eyes studying me for a moment too long. "Everything okay?" she asked, suspicion flickering across her face. My palms sweated. Did she know I had been searching? I forced a laugh, shaking my head. "Just tired, that's all." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. Something in the air shifted, tense and brittle. I nibbled at a cookie, my stomach twisting. Every bite tasted of lies. I couldn't confront her yet, not without more. But the letters proved one thing. Henry had trusted her with something he hadn't trusted me with, and she had hidden it from me. As I sat there, Eloise began reminiscing, her voice soft, her tone drenched in false nostalgia. Henry used to talk about you constantly, how strong you were, how much he depended on you. The words should have comforted me, but they felt like daggers. If he had trusted me so much, why did he leave me in the dark? Why had Eloise been the one holding letters meant for me? I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the betrayal hidden in her wooden box. My pulse thundered in my ears. I needed to get out to think. I should probably head home soon, I said, rising to my feet. Eloise's smile faltered just slightly. So soon? You barely touched your coffee. My heart clenched. Was that disappointment or calculation? Forced a nod. I'll visit again soon. I promise. My words tasted like ash. As I stepped outside into the cool afternoon air, my mind spiraled. The letters burned in my memory. Henry's words trapped in her house all these years. Why had she kept them? To protect me or to control me? My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, rage simmering beneath my fear. Calder had been right. Proof was here, hidden in her home. But it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed to know why she had been with him that night. My chest tightened at the thought. If she had lied about that, then maybe Henry's death wasn't as simple as it seemed. The idea clawed at me, chilling my blood. I drove home, every street sign blurring into nothing, determination hardening inside me like stone. Eloise had answers, and I would get them, even if it meant tearing apart everything I thought I knew. That night I spread out my thoughts like puzzle pieces. Henry's ledger, Eloise's name, the date of his death, the hidden letters. It all formed a picture, but the edges were jagged, incomplete. I needed the missing piece. My mind kept circling back to Calder. He had known things Henry never told me. He had guided me toward Eloise. But why? Was he helping me or manipulating me? My stomach twisted with unease. I picked up the phone, dialing his number with shaking hands. He answered on the first ring. You saw her, he said flatly, as if he'd been waiting. What did you find? My voice wavered. Letters. From Henry. Me. She kept them. A pause stretched across the line before Calder chuckled darkly. Then you're closer to the truth than I thought. Be careful, Vivian. Eloise isn't who you think she is. His voice dropped. And she's watching you. His words froze me. Watching me. My eyes darted to the window. The shadows outside thick and unyielding. My heart slammed against my ribs. What do you mean? I whispered. Calder's tone was sharp, urgent now. She's known all along. You were too obvious today. If she hasn't already guessed, she will soon. And once she does, you won't be safe. My breath came in ragged gasps. The image of Eloise's lingering stare, the falter in her smile, all came rushing back. She had suspected me. My hand trembled as I gripped the phone. What do I do? Silence filled the line, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Calder's voice returned, low and cold. You need to decide, Vivian. Do you expose her? Or do you let her destroy you first? The call ended abruptly, leaving me shaking in the dark. My house suddenly felt like a cage. And I wasn't sure I was alone. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every shadow felt like it stretched too long. Calder's warning played over and over in my mind. She's watching you. I left the lights on, clutching Henry's notebook like it could shield me. When dawn finally broke, I dragged myself to the window, peering through the blinds. My breath caught. Parked across the street was a beige sedan I didn't recognize. The windows were tinted, the engine off, but it sat there like a predator waiting for its moment. My stomach twisted into knots. Was it Eloise? Someone she hired? I stumbled back from the glass, my heart hammering. Fear tangled with fury inside me. I refused to be prey. Not anymore. I dressed quickly, pulled my hair into a tight bun, and grabbed the notebook. If Eloise wanted a game, I was ready to play. I decided not to drive my car. She would expect that. Instead, I called a rideshare, waiting in the shadows of my porch until the driver pulled up. I slid into the back seat, glancing over my shoulder. The beige sedan remained across the street, unmoving, but I swore I saw the faintest glimmer of light reflecting from its windshield, as if someone were watching through binoculars. My hands clenched into fists. "Where to?" the driver asked. My voice cracked slightly as I gave Calder's address. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The drive felt endless, each turn of the road pulling me further into uncertainty. When we arrived, Calder was already waiting on his porch, as if he had known I would come. His eyes narrowed, scanning the street behind me. "You weren't followed, were you?" he asked. My throat tightened as I shook my head. "I don't know." His jaw clenched. "Then we don't have much time." Inside his home, I spread Henry's notebook and told Calder everything. The letters, the box, the sedan. He listened in silence, his eyes dark, unreadable. When I finished, he leaned back, steepling his fingers. "She's escalating," he said quietly. "The fact that you found those letters means she knows her grip on Henry's secrets is slipping." His words chilled me. "But why?" I asked. "Why keep them from me? What is she trying to hide?" Calder tapped the notebook. "This ledger, the letters, they're not just about money. Henry discovered something. Something Eloise was desperate to keep buried. And if she was with him the night he died." His voice trailed off, but I knew what he meant. My chest tightened. "You think she killed him?" Calder's eyes met mine, sharp and unwavering. "I think she had a reason to. And now you've become a threat to her survival." The words sank like stones in my chest. My hands trembled as I touched the notebook's worn cover. "But Henry trusted her enough to share all this," I whispered. Calder shook his head. "Or he thought he could outsmart her. Maybe he didn't realize just how far she'd go." My stomach turned. The man I thought I knew, the marriage I thought I understood. It was all unraveling like an old sweater. Calder leaned forward, his voice urgent. "We need more than suspicion. We need evidence. Something that ties her to Henry's death beyond a doubt." My pulse quickened. "And where do we find that?" Calder's mouth curled into something between a smile and a grimace. "Her house. She's bold enough to hide the letters, but there's more. There always is. If we can get inside, really inside, we'll find what she's protecting." My throat dried. Breaking in wasn't courage. It was war. The thought of sneaking back into Eloise's home made my skin crawl. But I knew Calder was right. Letters alone weren't enough to expose her. "How do we do it?" I asked, my voice thin. Calder stood, pacing the room like a general preparing for battle. "She's clever, but she underestimates you. That's her weakness. She'll be watching, but she won't expect you to come directly for her." My heart hammered. "So I just walk back into her house and search while she's not there?" He nodded. "Exactly. And this time we'll know what to look for." He pulled out a folder from a drawer, spreading documents across the table. Blueprints, property records, even Eloise's daily routines. My eyes widened. "You've been watching her." Calder's lips pressed into a thin line. "Let's just say I've been preparing for this moment." Something about his certainty terrified me almost as much as Eloise did. We devised a plan. Eloise attended a weekly charity luncheon at the country club every Thursday. She was always punctual, always stayed until at least 3. That would give us a 2-hour window. Calder would act as lookout while I searched her study. My stomach churned as I listened, but determination burned brighter than fear. Henry had trusted me, even if I hadn't known it. His words, locked away in those hidden letters, demanded justice. "We'll go tomorrow," Calder said firmly, folding the papers back into his folder. "Get some rest. You'll need it." Rest. The word felt impossible. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind a tangle of rage and terror. Every sound outside felt like a threat, every shadow a watching eye. But underneath it all was a strange calm. For the first time since Henry's death, I had a purpose. Morning came, heavy with clouds that threatened rain. My nerves were raw, every movement jittery as I prepared. Calder picked me up in his car, his face grim. We drove in silence, the wipers swiping away mist on the windshield. Eloise's house loomed ahead, neat and polished, its shutters bright white against the gray sky. It looked so ordinary, so harmless. My chest tightened with hatred. "She's at the luncheon," Calder said, checking his watch. "We're clear." My hands shook as I used the spare key Eloise had once given me back when trust still existed. The irony burned as the lock clicked open. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and lavender, deceptively warm. I forced myself to move quickly, my footsteps muffled on the carpet. Calder stayed near the front, watching through the curtains. My eyes locked on her study door. This was it. The study was pristine, every book aligned, every surface gleaming. But I knew the truth hid beneath the polish. I rifled through drawers, checked behind framed photos, tapped the walls for hidden compartments. My heart raced with every discovery. Receipts for large cash withdrawals, property deeds and names I didn't recognize, and finally, a locked drawer. My breath caught. This was it. I pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged. I rummaged through her desk until I found a small key tucked beneath a false bottom. My hands shook as I slid it into the lock. The drawer opened with a soft click. Inside was a stack of documents, thick and bound with a rubber band. At the very top was a death certificate. My knees went weak as I read the name. Not Henry. Someone else. Someone I didn't know. But the date, just months before Henry died. My head spun. I flipped through the papers, each one worse than the last. Insurance policies, forged signatures, and correspondence that hinted at a string of deaths, each tied to Eloise in some way. My breath caught in my throat as the truth crashed over me. This wasn't just about Henry. Eloise had been weaving a web of deceit and death for years, profiting from each loss, covering her tracks with charm and kindness. My stomach churned. She wasn't just a betrayer. She was a predator. My hands trembled as I stuffed the papers into my bag. I had enough to ruin her now, enough to show the world who she really was. But as I turned to leave, the sound of a door creaking open froze me in place. My blood turned to ice. Eloise's voice floated down the hall, calm and measured. "Vivian, what are you doing in my house?" Her voice was like silk dipped in poison, smooth yet dripping with menace. "Vivian, what are you doing in my house?" My heart thundered so loud I thought she could hear it through the walls. I turned slowly, clutching the papers to my chest as though they might shield me. Eloise stood framed in the doorway, her tailored cream suit unwrinkled, her pearl necklace gleaming under the light. She looked every bit the polished widow she pretended to be. But her eyes were sharp, calculating and cold. I was looking for answers. I stammered, my throat dry. Her lips curved into a slow smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. She stepped further into the room, closing the door softly behind her. "And did you find them?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. My knees trembled, but I lifted my chin. "Yes." Her smile faded. For a moment, her face was still, unreadable, like porcelain before it cracks. Then she laughed, soft at first, then louder, echoing in the polished room. "Oh, Vivian," she said, shaking her head as if I were a foolish child. "You should have left this alone. Henry never could keep his secrets to himself. And now you've tangled yourself in a game you don't understand." I gripped the papers tighter. "These aren't just secrets," I said, my voice firmer now. "They're crimes. People died, Eloise. People you profited from." Her eyes narrowed into slits. The warmth drained from her face, leaving only the predator beneath. "Do you really think anyone will believe you?" she hissed. "You're a grieving widow with a fragile mind. That's the story they already whisper about you, isn't it?" My stomach churned. She was right, people already doubted me. But that only made my resolve harden. Calder's voice broke through the suffocating tension. "Step away from her, Eloise." I spun to see him standing in the doorway, his face grim, his hand resting inside his jacket pocket. Eloise's expression flickered, surprise flashing briefly before being replaced by icy calm. "Well, well," she purred. "The faithful dog. I should have known you'd come sniffing around." Calder's jaw tightened, but he didn't move closer. "I warned Henry about you," he said coldly. "And now Vivian knows the truth. It's over." Eloise tilted her head, regarding him with disdain. "Over?" she echoed, her voice dripping with mockery. "Darling, nothing is over until I say it is." She reached into her handbag, and my blood froze as she withdrew a small revolver. The polished metal glinted under the lamplight. Calder's hand moved slightly inside his jacket, but Eloise wagged a finger at him. "Ah, don't ruin the fun." My body went cold. Eloise pointed the gun casually, almost lazily, as if it were an accessory rather than a weapon. "You know, Henry once told me you were too naive, Vivian. That you'd never be able to handle the truth. And in a way he was right. Look at you, trembling, clutching those papers like a child holding a teddy bear." Rage surged in me, hot and unexpected. "You killed him, didn't you?" I snapped, my voice rising despite the gun trained on me. "You poisoned him, just like the others." Her eyes gleamed with something between pride and madness. "Henry was weak," she said simply. "Weak men always fall. But me, I survive." Her words sliced through me like glass. Calder's voice was steady, measured. "Eloise, think about what you're doing. There's no going back from this." He smirked. "There never is." The room felt suffocating, every second stretching into eternity. My palms were slick with sweat, but I forced myself to think. If Eloise shot Calder, I'd be next. If she shot me, Calder might not be fast enough to stop her. We were trapped. "You can't keep running from this," I said, my voice trembling but steady enough to cut through the silence. "These papers, they'll expose you. Even if you kill me, people will see what you've done." Her laughter rang out again, sharp and cruel. "People see what I want them to see, Vivian. They always have. You think you've uncovered some great scandal, but in reality, you're nothing but a pawn. Henry thought he could use me, Calder thought he could control me, and you think you can ruin me. But pawns never win." She raised the gun higher. Calder moved then, lightning fast, pulling a small pistol from his jacket and aiming it squarely at her. The air crackled with tension. Two weapons now raised in a deadly standoff. My breath caught in my throat. "Put it down, Eloise," Calder said, his voice like steel. "Don't make this worse." Eloise's smile widened, almost playful. "Oh, Calder, you've always been such a disappointment. Loyal to Henry, loyal to Vivian, but never strong enough to make a move on your own." She cocked the gun, the sound sharp and final. "I don't miss twice." My legs threatened to give out, but I forced myself to stand tall, holding the papers like a shield. "If you kill us," I said, forcing strength into my words, "you'll never stop looking over your shoulder. Henry's notebook is out there. His truth won't die with me." Her eyes flickered. It was the first crack I had seen in her armor. She hesitated, just long enough for Calder to step forward. "That's right," he pressed. "The notebook isn't the only copy. Henry made sure of that. Hurt Vivian, and his story will surface everywhere." Eloise's lips curled back, her polished mask slipping into a snarl. "You're bluffing," she spat. Calder's grip on his gun didn't falter. "Try me." For a long, terrifying moment, none of us moved. The only sound was the heavy tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Then, with a sharp motion, Eloise stepped closer, pressing the barrel of her revolver against my chest. My heart nearly stopped. "Then maybe I don't need to kill you," she whispered, her voice dripping venom. "Maybe I just need to break you so thoroughly no one ever listens to you again." My knees wobbled, fear crashing over me. Her words slithered into my mind, but something deep inside snapped. All the grief, all the betrayal, all the nights spent drowning in questions, it all ignited into fury. I met her gaze, refusing to look away. "You'll never silence me," I said, my voice low but unshakable. For the first time, Eloise's eyes flickered with something other than disdain. Anger. Real anger. She pressed the barrel harder into my chest, and I could feel the cold steel through my blouse. Calder's voice rang out, firm and sharp. "Enough!" The tension in the room was unbearable, my breath shallow, every nerve on fire. Eloise's finger twitched on the trigger. My world slowed to a crawl. And then, faint but unmistakable, sirens wailed in the distance. Her eyes widened, darting to the window. Calder's mouth curved into the barest hint of a smile. "You're out of time, Eloise." Her head snapped back to us, fury blazing in her gaze. For the first time, she looked truly cornered. The mask of elegance and charm was gone, replaced by raw, desperate rage. "You think you've won," she spat, her voice shaking. "This doesn't end here." My chest heaved, adrenaline flooding every inch of me. The sirens grew louder, closer, until red and blue lights flickered through the curtains. Calder's gun remained steady, his eyes locked on hers. I clutched the papers tighter, my pulse roaring in my ears. Eloise's hand trembled, just barely, as the sound of car doors slamming echoed outside. For a moment, the world hung in suspension, a breath before the storm. Then she leaned closer, her voice a hiss meant only for me. "If I go down, Vivian, I'm taking you with me." The sirens outside grew deafening, their red and blue glow flickering against the walls like firelight. Eloise's revolver pressed harder into my chest, and I could see the wild panic creeping into her perfectly painted face. For the first time since I'd met her, she wasn't in control. She knew it, Calder knew it, and so did I. "Drop it, Eloise," Calder barked, his pistol unwavering. The front door shook under the pounding of fists, a voice booming. "Police! Open up!" Eloise's eyes darted to the window, back to me, then to Calder. Her breath came fast, shallow, almost animal. And then, in a movement so swift I barely registered it, she shoved me aside and aimed the gun toward the door. My scream tore through the air, raw and desperate, just as the door burst open and the room exploded into chaos. Police flooded inside, their weapons drawn, their shouts sharp and commanding. Eloise froze, revolver still raised, her back rigid as if deciding whether to fire or surrender. For a moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a guttural cry, she hurled the gun onto the floor, her hands flying into the air. Officers swarmed her, pulling her arms behind her back, snapping cold metal cuffs around her wrists. Her shrieks were unlike anything I'd ever heard. High-pitched, venomous, filled with rage. "You fools! Do you know who I am? Do you know what I control?" But her power had evaporated, dissolved under flashing lights and uniformed authority. As they dragged her out, she twisted her head toward me, eyes blazing with fury and hatred. "This isn't the end, Vivian," she spat, her voice echoing down the hall. But I knew deep in my bones it was. The room went still after they carried her away, the silence so heavy it pressed on my chest. Calder lowered his pistol, his hand trembling slightly for the first time. I realized I was still clutching the papers, knuckles white, breath ragged. My knees buckled, and I collapsed into the nearest chair, the weight of everything crashing down on me at once. Tears spilled down my cheeks, but they weren't just grief, they were release. "It's over," I whispered, almost afraid to believe it. Calder crouched beside me, his voice softer now. "No, Vivian. It's just beginning. These documents, they'll unravel everything Eloise built." I nodded slowly, staring at Henry's handwriting. The ink faded, but the truth still burning on the page. My husband's voice, his warning, his desperate attempt to make me see. It had all led here. He may have been gone, but his words had saved me. In the weeks that followed, Eloise's empire crumbled like sand slipping through fingers. Headlines screamed her name. Reporters camped outside her mansion, and the courtroom overflowed with victims ready to testify. Fraud, embezzlement, blackmail, murder. Charges stacked higher than even she could climb. I watched it all unfold, my grief warring with a grim satisfaction. The world finally saw the woman behind the pearls and perfect smile. And though she fought with every ounce of venom in her, each secret Henry left in that notebook sealed her fate. Calder stood by me through it all, his presence steady as a rock while storms raged around us. But when I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, it wasn't victory I felt. It was emptiness. Revenge had come, justice had been served, but nothing would bring Henry back. Nothing could erase the hollow space in my heart. One evening, as twilight draped the sky in shades of purple and gold, I returned to Henry's study. The notebook sat on the desk, its cover worn, pages filled with words that had destroyed and saved me all at once. My fingers traced his handwriting, tears blurring my vision. "You wanted me to see the truth," I whispered. "And I did. But Henry, why did you leave me to face it alone?" The silence answered, but in that stillness, I felt him. Not in body, but in spirit, in the legacy he left behind. He had armed me with the truth, even if it shattered me. And maybe, just maybe, that was his final act of love. I closed the notebook gently, as if tucking him into bed for the last time. For the first time since his death, I let myself breathe without drowning. Months passed, and life slowly reshaped itself. Eloise remained behind bars, her once untouchable name dragged through the mud. Victims she had silenced for years stepped forward, emboldened by her fall. Justice was messy, slow, imperfect, but it was happening. I began volunteering at a local shelter, using Henry's remaining funds to support those hurt by her schemes. Giving back became my balm, a way to turn the pain into something meaningful. And Calder, he became more than a friend. We never spoke of love, not yet, but his hand brushing mine as we walked, his steady gaze when my grief threatened to swallow me, said enough. In quiet moments, I caught myself wondering if perhaps, after all this, life was giving me a second chance. Not to erase the past, but to write a new chapter. But closure rarely comes wrapped neatly in a bow. One morning, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address, the handwriting elegant yet jagged. My pulse quickened as I tore it open. The words inside chilled me to the bone. "You think you've won, but pawns are easily replaced. Watch your back." No signature, but I didn't need one. Eloise's venom seeped through every letter. Her threat coiled like a snake waiting in the dark. For hours I sat frozen, fear clawing at me again. Calder urged me to take it to the police, and I did, but deep down, I knew Eloise's shadow would linger long after prison bars closed around her. Yet, instead of breaking me, the letter hardened me. I wasn't the trembling widow she once mocked. I had faced her and survived. I had turned Henry's notebook into her undoing, and I would not be afraid. The final blow came during her sentencing. Standing in the courtroom, Eloise looked smaller than I had ever seen her, her pearls gone, her face pale. The judge's gavel thundered as he delivered a lifetime sentence without parole. Gasps rippled through the crowd, but I just sat still, my heart calm. Eloise turned her head slowly, her eyes finding mine across the room. They were no longer blazing with fury, no longer dripping with arrogance. They were hollow, defeated. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered Henry's pain, the lives she had destroyed, the way she pressed cold steel into my chest without a flicker of remorse. And I knew pity had no place here. She had chosen her path, and now she would walk it alone. As I left the courthouse, sunlight warmed my face, and for the first time, it felt like freedom. Life after Eloise wasn't perfect. The scars she left, on me, on Henry, on countless others, would never fade completely. But I learned to live with them, to let them remind me not of what I lost, but of what I gained. Strength, clarity, resilience. Henry's notebook no longer sat on the desk but on a shelf, tucked safely among other books. A relic of pain but also of truth. Sometimes I would open it, read his words, and feel him beside me. Not as the man who hid secrets, but as the man who tried in his flawed way to protect me. And every time I did, I whispered the same promise. I won't waste the life you left me. I'll make it mean something. And I did. Slowly, steadily I did. The shadows of the past still lingered, but light had finally found its way in. To anyone listening, let my story be a reminder. Grief may break you, betrayal may hollow you, but truth can rebuild you. Even when it cuts like glass, even when it feels unbearable, it is the only weapon strong enough to bring down giants. If you carry secrets, let them out. If you carry pain, don't bury it. And if someone tries to silence you, remember, you are stronger than they think. My journey began with a notebook I almost ignored, and it ended with a freedom I never thought I'd feel again. And as I close this chapter of my life, I want to thank you for walking through it with me. If my story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. And who knows, you may find strength in them, just as I found mine.